I was wondering, looking at all those pictures that are your favourites, and noticing that they had one or two things in common, one of which is a large interest or a strong interest in line. And wondering very much where you would put your own work in relation to the dichotomy that you described between writers and illustrators who are interested in setting and landscape and the fantastical, and writers who are more primarily interested in character and interrelationship.
Well, I'm very interested in landscape. I think it's essential for me when I'm writing a story. It's essential for me to know what the weather's like, for example, at any particular point. I have a little checklist, as it were, of things I'd like the reader to be aware of, or rather, things which I wouldn't want the reader to have to ask about. I'd like them to know where they are, in a particular scene, I mean, who's present, where the light's coming from, what the weather's like, if we're in a room, what sort of room is it. These things are important to me. And so where it's important for the story, I like to try and make them clear so that the reader, if they're like me and needs to know these things, will know them. You have to know where to draw the line, of course, not put too much in, because the danger is flooding the thing with information that is unnecessary. So it's a question of judgment, and you learn that. It's a question of paring it down as much as you can without cutting too much away. It's a thing perhaps you get better at with practice, I don't know. But I do like to know what settings my scenes have. And I think my readers do. Well, if they don't, tough. They put up with it. But if they do, there's enough there to give them a starting point.
To return to the borderland, I've spent many happy hours in various different borderlands. But when you talk about illustrations, isn't there a danger that the illustration doesn't actually, that's in the book, that's somebody else's borderland? It doesn't match your borderland. And I have to say, the picture that you showed of William doesn't look like my picture of William. And your illustrator for the Folio Society got Lyra totally wrong, I'm afraid.
Well, you win some and you lose some. You're quite right, of course, and it depends. It does depend on temperament, as I think I began by saying. One of the things that affects whether we fall in love with a picture or not is whether we just respond to it at a sort of deep emotional level, below the level we can talk about almost. I found this with Richard Kennedy's illustrations to the book that in French is called Le Cheval sans tête, but which in English is 100 million francs. I love his illustration. I can't stand the French ones. But the French were the original ones, and if I'd seen that first, well, I might not have liked the book so much. It's a mysterious thing. I can't understand your point about William, though. Surely that's the only William who could possibly be. Thomas Henry's William. There's Martin Jarvis's William, of course, which you don't like him either. Oh dear, you are hard to please, aren't you?
There's just something about William that doesn't quite hit the mark in that illustration. I couldn't tell you what it was. I couldn't draw you a picture of my William, but there is something just not quite right about that William.
Well, you'll just have to go through and tear all the pictures out.
I'm quite scared to watch the film. I don't want my borderland to be ruined. And I was wondering how much of an influence you had over the atmosphere of the film, because the books are incredibly atmospheric. And, I just don't want to have a different version of that subjected to me. I want to keep my own precious atmosphere. How much of an influence did you have?
Well, I had as much as I could usefully have without taking up every minute of my life for 2 years. As the writer of a book, you have a very limited amount of power. You can't say, don't do this, you've got to do that, on no account do it, or whatever it is. You can't do that because you've sold them the rights, and they've got the right to make the story as they think fit. On the other hand, they want to keep on the right side of you, so you won't go all grumpy and complain to the papers. So they take a bit of notice of you. But if you're worried about it, don't see the film. That's the simplest answer. Actually, though, I think you're worrying unnecessarily for two reasons. In the first place, I think the film's pretty good, and the landscapes that they depict are pretty good. In the second, and the second point is that you know, because of the question you asked, and we all know because of our experience with books and films, that our usual reaction to films of books we like is disappointment. We expect to be disappointed. We know that she didn't look like that, and he wouldn't have said that, and they've left my favourite bit out, and they've changed the ending. We know all that. That's what happens. So go expecting the worst, and you won't be too disappointed. is a good general principle for going to see films of books that you've enjoyed. The performances are very good, but again, your Lyra might not look like Dakota Blue Richards, who played her. My Mrs. Coulter did look very like Nicole Kidman. But it's because I told them 10 years before they cast the film that I wanted Nicole Kidman for that part. And eventually they came up trumps. So there were bits of it you'll like, and bits of it you'll be disappointed. But there is no law, thank goodness, that says that when a film is made of a book, all the copies of the book have to be taken away and burnt. The book is still there.
I read a couple of years ago that you were working on another book about Lyra called The Book of Dust. Can I ask you what progress is being made, please?
Yes. Well, it is making progress, but slowly. I've been interrupted. Maybe I shouldn't have let myself be interrupted, but I'm nice. No, I find it very hard to say no when people ask me to do things. But I have been interrupted much more since The Amber Spyglass than ever in my life before that. But partly by the film, by the Golden Compass film that was made, it came out a couple of years ago. That took up an enormous amount of my time. And doing other things. But at the back of my mind always is The Book of Dust, and it's growing slowly. And when I've got through the thing I'm doing at the moment, I will turn back to it with a great sigh of relief, because I can now see my way through to the end. So yes, it is coming, and I do apologise it's taken so long. Lyra will be well into her mid-20s, I think, by the time.